Alright, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I'm a pretty basic tokusatsu guy. I certainly hope that quote doesn't bite me in the ass later. I grew up with Power Rangers for most of my life, and that opened the door to Super Sentai, and through Super Sentai I learned about the world of Kamen Rider, and those had basically been my main squeezes for tokusatsu. But what about Ultraman? This goofy looking guy? I don't know, I was so used to the stylings of Sentai and Rider that Ultraman's aesthetics just never did it for me. His face was so awkwardly oval, his eyes were also so oddly shaped, and he just maneuvered himself so awkwardly? I guess my keyword is awkward here. Because I never grew up with Ultraman, I didn't have an attachment to him at all. I think maybe if I'd gotten into Ultra as a kid, I'd have a reason to be interested in the future iterations just as I am with Sentai and Rider. But nah, I just wasn't. It wasn't the same, and I really couldn't be bothered with it much. I think I tried giving Ultraman G to watch, and I still couldn't get into it. So after that, Ultraman would never re-enter my life. Until I was on Twitter around the time that the Bakuage Sentai Boom Boomger trademark was dropped, and I forget where I saw this, but someone predicted that the Henshin device would be similar to the Blazar Brace. I had no idea what that was, so I looked it up and I watched a review video for it. And wow, this thing was really cool. The spinning light effect was very akin to the Drive Driver, but the sounds were so unique and so alien, which I'm pretty sure this is a common style for Ultra. That alone piqued my interest, and then when I was home visiting my family, I noticed that Blazar had full episodes posted on YouTube. So I thought, what the hell? I'm open to new things, and I need to cover things other than Sentai and Rider on this channel, so let's try it out. And let me tell you, I am a fan. Ultraman Blazar is definitely a different flavor of tokusatsu that I'm used to. The main difference that defines Ultraman are the mega-sized battles that take place between Ultraman and devastating kaijus. It's quite literally on a different scale than Sentai and Rider. So what was it about Blazar that finally got me into liking Ultraman? Well, I'm gonna break that down for you today. Here's what I think so far about Ultraman Blazar. Now, quick disclaimer, this is not really a should you watch video because as an ultra virgin, another phrase that's gonna haunt me, I may not be the most credible source to recommend this particular series to you. This is just gonna be a measure of my own enjoyment based on the first 11 episodes, as that's as much as what's out on YouTube right now. And this will be as spoiler free as possible. Also, please like and subscribe and follow on Twitter. Alright, let's go. Ultraman Blazar follows the story of Hiruma Gento, a member of the Global Guardian Force, a coalition among nations to provide defense against threats of all kinds. During a counteroffensive against the Kaiju Bazanga, he guides his team to suppress the attack while also gaining the ability to transform into Ultraman Blazar, and successfully defeats the Kaiju. Keeping his Ultraman powers secret, Gento is recognized for his outstanding tactical skills and is appointed captain of a newly assembled strike team called Scarred, specifically designated to defeat Kaiju threats and, if needed, subdue Ultraman using their special skills and their very own robotic Kaiju, Earth Garon. This team is composed of members Aobe Emi, the versatile undercover operative, Nagara Teraraki, the calm and collected vice captain, Minami Anri, the strong-willed martial arts specialist, and Bando Yasunobu, the friggin' jacked mechanical wizard who handles all things tech on the team. The story follows the scarred team members as they become more acquainted with their jobs and each other, all while combating one serious kaiju threat after another and slowly unearthing the truth behind Blazar's existence. So what about this particular show tickled my fancy? Well, let's get into what's good, or rather, what I like. The premise, but here's why. This is a story about Ultraman, yes, but this is also the story of humans giving a very human effort to defend themselves against things that are incredibly unhuman. In order to even stand a close match against these titanic kaiju, they have to put together this massive robotic T-Rex that I swear looks so much like Goju Rex from Gokaiger. The reason I bring this up is because in Sentai and Rider, you mainly focus on the individuals as your main protagonists. Here, yes, it is Gento, Blazar, and Scarred, but there's a huge emphasis on humanity as a whole that's fighting against the kaiju. Only when they're backed into a corner does Blazar come out and save the day, but until then, our cast of protagonists aren't superheroes or anything. They're humans doing their job with a deep passion and dedication to keeping the world safe. That in itself gives the entire show a different feel for me from Sentai and Rider. There's a lot of strong protagonist energy that comes from the humans working together rather than from the isolated individual contributions themselves, and I think that adds a new feeling of unity and scale to the protagonist role and dynamic. Speaking of which, I think Ultraman Blazar has a really good stylistic tone. While of course Ultraman, the Kaiju, and the technology behind Scarred and Earth Garon are all fantastical, it feels like the show doesn't place as much of an emphasis on that as much as the more grounded, humanizing aspects. Sure, it's a show about a giant alien wrestling some Godzilla-tier monsters in a pretend city, but the show frames itself in a way that presents this premise incredibly well. I think one of the ways it does this well is the look of the show overall, specifically meaning the cinematography. I'm not sure how else to explain it, but I feel like the way this show is shot, it feels a lot more like a drama than a kid's show. This makes those more serious moments hit just right. But that doesn't mean it takes itself too seriously either. Blazar does a good job of adjusting its tone for whatever the scene needs to be. Side note, it hasn't gotten into it yet, and I don't know if it will, but up until now, Gento has been keeping his Ultraman powers a secret, and there hasn't been a lot of divulgence on the origins of his powers yet. I think for me, personally, the absence of them trying to make it make sense makes it more believable to me. Instead of filling it with incoherent fluff about the powers and stuff, the scenes where he's not Ultraman, he's just human. They're just human. They don't focus too much on trying to justify power origins or power scaling, and to be honest, I prefer it when they provide background reasoning on that stuff because I'm a huge fan of things that make logical sense. But sometimes, if you try to make it make sense and it doesn't make sense, then it takes me way out of it. So the fact that things are as mysterious as they are is a huge plus to me, and it adds even more mystery and tension to Gento and Blazar having to find that balance between themselves. Another aspect of the look, can we talk about the Kaiju? Tokusatsu takes its roots back to the original old-school Godzilla days and the practical special effects that made those movies happen. Those concepts of course have evolved over time and changed into what we know and see today, but interestingly enough, Ultraman's Kaiju designs are really reminiscent of those older styles. I really felt like I was watching a Godzilla movie with each new and more monstrous kaiju being introduced, and yes, it's because it's literally in the same genre as the big lizard man himself, but there's something about these designs that's more, I want to say rustic, maybe organic, and I'm sure all you kaiju heads are like, yeah, that's how kaiju are supposed to be, and yeah, I really appreciate this difference from when we see big mecha battles in Sentai. Usually, the name of the game is fight the monster of the week as Rangers, then it supersizes itself, summon the mecha, gatai, defeat, and save the day, you know? The difference in that is that there is definitely already an explicit narrative guiding that flow, a lot of which stems from the monster usually being able to communicate its thoughts to us and the Rangers and so on. With the kaiju, these things are actual monsters, like animal monsters. We have no idea what their motive is. We just know that they look and sound terrifying and they are fucking shit up and we have to do something about it. That elicits such a different feeling than other supersized baddies in Toku. There's a new sense of mystery, tension, pressure, all of it attributed to the savage and animalistic traits given to these kaiju, visually and behaviorally. While it's likely not a new concept to most of you, I found this particularly refreshing because not only does it elicit a different feeling in the audience, but it also directly affects how our protagonists tackle these specific challenges. Something I also enjoy about Ultraman Blazar is its seemingly low reliance on CGI. Okay, it's either that they don't use CGI a whole lot or their CGI is really good, because unlike Sentai and Rider, there isn't a whole lot of visual blasphemy done in the form of sloppy CGI. I really like this because it leans even more into the practical effects side of Tokusatsu. Most of the fight scenes are done quite practically, with only some attacks being done CGI, and when it is done, it's not like in most shows where the entire character is redone in CGI and they're doing some crazy shit that looks immediately out of place with the rest of the show. It's usually the attacks or something, and it fits well. I feel like with less reliance on blatant CGI, more of the budget must have gone into the highly detailed suits as well as the camera work and cinematography. The biggest thing I liked about Ultraman Blazar is its, for now, non-reliance on past Ultraman. I noticed that a lot of Ultraman gimmicks take the form of past Ultras, and even in Geed, I think his base form required the use of Ultras that I didn't even know about. I was kind of really confused. It got me caught up in the thought of, does that mean all Ultras powers rely on previous Ultras? Do I need to watch other Ultraman series before I watch any Ultraman series? And in Blazar, it's literally the opposite of modern day Sentai or Rider where they change gimmicks all the time. He just has one to transform and one to use his rainbow slash attack later on, which I think works great. It helped establish, for me at least, Ultraman Blazar's powers being of his own and not reliant on past incarnations that I need background on. It's simple, it works, it doesn't make it any more complicated or convoluted than it has to be. These are some of the things that really stuck out to me while watching Ultraman Blazar and made me think, wow, This is a whole other side to tokusatsu that I would have never seen if I didn't give Ultraman a chance. The serious tone and darker cinematography, the disturbing realism of the kaiju suits and designs, and the battles between kaiju and humanity as a whole really got me hooked on this show. But it by no means is all rainbows and butterflies. I do have some nitpicks that aren't enough to make me hate the show, but they still kind of stick out to me anyways. My first nitpick I'm going to talk about is with the Blazar Brace itself. I know my initial intrigue with Ultraman Blazar was centered around my fascination with the brace, and I stand by the fact that this is a very cool changer. I do feel like the design isn't very thematic with the coin slot mechanic. I also feel like the button he presses to transform into Blazar isn't very well integrated into the design either. It's literally just an elevated rectangle on the edge of the brace that is like kinda subtle, but not very well thought out. For a changer with such cool features, the lack of integration is a bit of a bummer. Earlier, I praised the designs of the kaiju in that they were so animalistic and wild and just straight up monstrous. Look at this guy. And tell me, does he look like the robot kaiju to you? This is actually the worst design in the entire show, hands down. I don't care that the show isn't over yet, literally nothing is gonna be worse than this. Thematically it makes no sense, and aesthetically it makes no sense. It's so strange that someone was given the prompt robot kaiju and we're like, yeah, I totally knocked it out of the park with this one. And speaking of bad designs, Herby, no. I honestly think I owe Hasbro a bit of an apology for having bad designs because I'm sorry, this design is awful. It's like they just took props from the theater department and scrapped something together really fast for this. Got her wearing a dress that gives me war flashbacks to the black and blue / white and gold debate. Just no. So that's it for my nitpicks, and I realize I haven't even really talked about Blazar himself yet. Blazar is fine. As far as Ultraman goes, he's one of the least goofy ones in my opinion. It might have to do with the shape, angle, and placement of his eyes, and his mouth is a bit less dopey looking. I always thought, isn't Ultraman supposed to look cool? And then he looks like this. There's this thing that Blazar does before he fights, like he raises his hands and knees and almost gets into a bow-like position. It's kind of silly, but it is cool. And yes, this show still is just kind of silly. The GGF throwing all their high-tech arsenal at these destructive monsters to no avail, but you know what's the real solution? A red and silver boy doing wrestling moves while making bubbly noises every now and then. I'm not saying this to knock it. It's silly, and it's not as flashy as I'd like it to be, but for some reason, I'm okay with that. And it's because it feels like by not making it excessively flashy or CGI, it's holding tight to its origins and concept, and I do appreciate that. I forgot to mention one more thing I really like about Ultraman Blazar that's pretty special. It's on YouTube, and it's available in both Japanese and English voice dub. Now, me being me, I always default to listening to the original Japanese audio, but the English dub actually sounds really good, and it's really cool that they have the option for you to switch back and forth between the audio tracks on YouTube. It's also just so cool then to publish their episodes like this. It's almost like Tsuburaya is encouraging all audiences, regardless of region, to intake their content. For me, Ultraman Blazar is a breath of fresh air. As someone whose main exposure to tokusatsu has been the likes of Sentai and Rider, Blazar feels like an appropriate entry-level Ultra series that eases you into the concept and doesn't bombard you with complicated terminologies or references to past series. The key highlights are really how well this show is produced and presented, as well as the complex dynamic between humanity and the kaiju, as well as humanity and Ultraman. Its strength lies in its strong connection to his roots, but in that strength also lies a weakness, being its inclinations towards incredibly silly designs. Carrying the story is a colorful cast of characters that are all very likable and have great chemistry together in a mostly believable and relatable way. All in all, it's a special recipe that captures the true essence of tokusatsu with a heart the size of an Ultra, and I'm very excited to see how the story continues to unfold. I realize a lot of my commentary on Blazar may be on Ultraman as a whole since I'm not so familiar with the franchise. So what about you? Are you watching Ultraman Blazar, and what do you like about it so far? Let me know. Thanks again for tuning into my Toku Talks as I try to expand my own perspective and provide some thoughtful insight and analysis to all things Toku. I'll see you all next time.